My name is Emily Wilson and I'm 26 years old. What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but every word is true. 3 months ago, my own family buried me alive as what they called a prank. Today they're all homeless, crying and begging for my forgiveness. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Growing up, I was always the responsible one. While my cousins Rick, Tiffany, and Jerome were partying and living off family money, I was working 2 jobs and putting myself through nursing school. My grandmother's house became my sanctuary, the only place I felt truly safe. She raised me when my parents couldn't, and when she passed last year, she left me that house in her will. That's when everything changed. My family couldn't stand that the poor relative inherited the family home. The jealousy was suffocating. Rick would show up drunk, demanding I share what was rightfully his. Tiffany would bring her friends over without permission, treating my home like a party venue. Jerome, the youngest at 22, was the worst, constantly stealing my belongings and claiming I owed the family for raising me. I tried being patient. I tried setting boundaries. But they saw my kindness as weakness. They started planning something that would haunt me forever. The morning it happened, Rick called me, his voice unusually cheerful. "Hey cuz, we're throwing you a surprise party at the old cemetery. Trust us, you'll love it." I should have known better. I should have seen the signs. But family is family, right? The cemetery was eerily quiet that October evening. Rick, Tiffany, and Jerome were there with shovels, standing beside a freshly dug grave. My stomach dropped, but Rick just laughed. "Relax, Emily. It's just a prank. We're gonna bury you for like 30 minutes, then dig you out. It'll be hilarious." "Are you insane?" I backed away, but Jerome grabbed my arms. "This isn't funny. This is psychotic." "Come on," Tiffany giggled, filming with her phone. "Don't be such a baby. It's just dirt. We'll put in an air tube and everything." They overpowered me, shoving me into a wooden box that barely fit my body. The lid slammed shut and darkness consumed me. I heard the first shovel of dirt hit the wood above my head. Then another. And another. Panic set in as I realized they were actually doing this. "Please," I screamed, pounding on the lid. "Let me out. This isn't a prank anymore." But the shoveling continued. The weight above me grew heavier. The air tube they promised, it never came. The last thing I heard before losing consciousness was Tiffany's voice. "Make sure you get this on video. This is going viral." I woke up in the hospital 3 days later. A jogger had heard my muffled screams and called 911. The doctors said I was minutes away from suffocation. Rick, Tiffany, and Jerome visited me, acting like concerned family members. They claimed it was just a misunderstanding, and that I was overreacting. The police treated it as a family dispute, not attempted murder. "You're lucky to be alive," Dr. Peterson told me during my follow-up appointment. "The oxygen deprivation could have caused permanent brain damage." His words echoed in my mind as I sat in my grandmother's house, staring at the wall. The physical wounds were healing, but the psychological scars ran deeper than anyone could see. My family acted like nothing happened. Rick texted me, "Hope you're feeling better. When can we come over again?" Tiffany posted the burial video on social media with laughing emojis, calling it family fun times. Jerome left voicemails saying I was being dramatic and needed to get over it. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I was having nightmares every night, waking up gasping for air, clawing at invisible dirt. My therapist, Mrs. Walker, suggested I take time away from toxic family members. But they wouldn't let me heal. Rick showed up at my door at midnight, drunk and demanding I give him a key to his house. When I refused, he started kicking the door, screaming that I was ungrateful and selfish. Neighbors called the police, but by the time they arrived, he was gone. That night, something inside me shifted. I realized they would never stop. They saw my survival not as a miracle but as an inconvenience. They wanted me gone, and if they couldn't bury me permanently, they'd make my life so miserable I'd disappear on my own. I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to show them exactly what losing everything felt like. I started researching my family's finances, and what I discovered was shocking. Rick was 3 months behind on his mortgage, living off credit cards and lying to his wife about their financial situation. Tiffany had been embezzling money from the salon where she worked, cooking the books to hide thousands in missing funds. Jerome was dealing drugs from his apartment, using his legitimate job as a cover. But the biggest revelation came when I dug into my grandmother's will. I found documents showing that my family had been stealing from her for years before she died. Bank statements revealed unauthorized withdrawals, forged checks, and manipulated account access. They had drained nearly $50,000 from her savings. "This is elder abuse," my lawyer Mr. Anderson confirmed when I brought him the evidence. "And the statute of limitations hasn't expired. We can pursue both criminal charges and civil restitution." I also discovered something else. My family had been telling people I was mentally unstable after the burial incident. They were spreading rumors that I was making everything up for attention, that the prank was actually my idea, and that I was trying to frame them. Tiffany had even gone to my workplace, telling my supervisor that I might be dangerous and suicidal. She suggested they keep an eye on me, planting seeds of doubt about my mental state. When I confronted her about it, she smirked and said, "Maybe if you stopped being so sensitive, people wouldn't worry about you." That was it. The final straw. They wanted to play games with my life, my sanity, and my reputation. Fine. But I was about to teach them that actions have consequences. I spent weeks documenting everything. Every text message, every voicemail, every social media post. I installed security cameras around my house after Rick's midnight visit, and sure enough, they came back. Jerome tried to break in through a window while I was at work, not knowing I had surveillance footage of everything. The video showed him searching through my belongings, taking family photos and documents. He even went through my medications, probably looking for something to use against me. When he found my therapy appointment cards, he took pictures with his phone. I realized they were building a case to have me declared mentally incompetent. "They're trying to contest your grandmother's will," Mr. Anderson explained after reviewing the evidence. "If they can prove you're mentally unstable, they might be able to claim the inheritance was made under duress or that you're unfit to manage the property." I felt sick. The burial wasn't just a prank. It was part of a larger plan to destroy my credibility and steal what my grandmother left me. They had underestimated me, though. While they were playing psychological games, I was building an airtight legal case. I contacted Detective Morrison, who had initially dismissed the burial as a family dispute. This time I came with evidence. Bank records, surveillance footage, witness statements from neighbors who had seen Rick's threatening behavior, and medical records documenting the trauma from the burial incident. "This changes everything," Detective Morrison admitted, reviewing the file. "We're looking at elder abuse, attempted murder, breaking and entering, stalking, and fraud. Your family is in serious trouble." But I wasn't done yet. I had one more card to play. I decided to give my family exactly what they wanted: access to my grandmother's house. I called Rick, putting on my most defeated voice. "You win," I told him. "I can't handle the stress anymore. The house is too much responsibility. Maybe we should talk about sharing it." Rick was ecstatic. Within an hour, all three of them were at my door with beer and celebration attitudes. They thought they had broken me, that their psychological warfare had finally worked. They had no idea I was recording everything. "See, I knew you'd come around," Rick said, cracking open a beer in my living room. "This house should belong to the whole family anyway. Grandma was probably confused when she made that will." Jerome laughed. "Yeah, and after what happened at the cemetery, we figured you learned your lesson about trying to keep everything for yourself." "That burial thing was genius," Tiffany added, scrolling through her phone. "You should have seen your face. I've watched that video like 100 times." They spent the next 3 hours detailing their plan. How they would move their families into the house, rent out rooms for extra income, and eventually force me to sign over the deed. Rick even suggested they could have me committed if I caused any problems. "Mental institutions are expensive," Jerome noted. "But if we control her assets, we can afford the best treatment for poor, unstable Emily." I listened to them plan my entire future. How they would control my finances, make medical decisions for me, and essentially erase my existence. They talked about me like I was already gone. That's when I smiled and said the words that would haunt them forever. "That's fascinating. You might want to meet my friends." Detective Morrison and 2 uniformed officers stepped out from the kitchen where they had been listening to everything. My family's faces went from smug satisfaction to pure terror in seconds. "Rick Wilson, Tiffany Johnson, Jerome Wilson, you're under arrest," Detective Morrison announced. "You have the right to remain silent." "Wait, what's happening?" Tiffany screamed. Emily, what did you do? I did what you taught me, I replied calmly. I took control of the situation. Rick tried to run but was tackled by officers in the hallway. Jerome attempted to delete something from his phone before it was confiscated. Tiffany broke down crying, begging me to fix this, and promising she would never bother me again. The charges include conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, attempted murder, breaking and entering, and stalking, Detective Morrison explained as he cuffed them. We also have evidence of embezzlement, drug trafficking, and harassment. As they were led away, Rick turned to me with pure hatred in his eyes. You're dead to this family, he snarled. When we get out, you'll regret this. Actually, I said, pulling out a folder of documents, you won't be getting out anytime soon. And there's something else you should know. I held up the foreclosure notices, eviction papers, and termination letters I had prepared. Your mortgage company, Tiffany's employer, and Jerome's landlord all received very interesting information today. Along with the IRS, the DA, and several other agencies. The color drained from their faces as they realized the scope of what was about to happen to them. Within 48 hours, my family's entire world collapsed. Rick's wife, Sandra, called me crying. The bank had accelerated his mortgage due to fraud investigations, and she had just learned about his massive credit card debt. I had no idea, she sobbed. He told me everything was fine. Now they're saying we could lose the house. Tiffany's boss, Mrs. Miller, fired her immediately after discovering the embezzled funds. The salon pressed criminal charges and demanded full restitution. Tiffany's apartment lease was terminated when her income verification proved fraudulent. Jerome's situation was the worst. The DA raided his apartment based on evidence I provided about his drug dealing. They found enough narcotics to charge him as a distributor, not just a user. His legitimate job fired him, and his landlord evicted him within a week. But I wasn't finished. I had also contacted their extended network, friends who had witnessed their treatment of me, employers who needed to know about their criminal activities, and family members who had been kept in the dark about their behavior. My Aunt Carol, Rick's mother, called me in shock. Emily, is it true? Did they really bury you alive? When I confirmed it, she broke down. I raised him better than this. I'm so sorry, baby. I had no idea what they were doing to you. The community response was overwhelming. Once word spread about the burial incident, people were horrified. My grandmother's friends, neighbors, and church members rallied around me with support I never expected. Your grandmother would be proud, Mrs. Patterson from next door told me. She always said you were the strongest one in that family. Now everyone can see she was right. The court proceedings were swift and decisive. With the recorded confessions and overwhelming evidence, plea bargains were the only option. Rick received 5 years for elder abuse and attempted murder. Tiffany got 3 years plus restitution requirements. Jerome, due to the drug charges, was looking at 8 years minimum. But the civil suits were where I really made them pay. The court ordered full restitution for my grandmother's stolen money, plus damages for emotional distress, medical expenses, and punitive damages. The total came to over $200,000. They'll be paying you back for the rest of their lives, Mr. Anderson explained. We've also secured liens against any future assets they might acquire. Rick's wife Sandra divorced him while he was awaiting sentencing. She kept the house initially, but the financial damage was too severe. Within 6 months, she was forced to sell and move in with her parents. I don't blame you, she told me. You did what you had to do. I just wish I had known who I married. Tiffany's family disowned her completely. Her parents, who I barely knew, actually reached out to apologize for their daughter's behavior. We failed somewhere, her mother said. But that's no excuse for what she did to you. Jerome's friends and associates began avoiding him once his legal troubles became public. The drug conviction labeled him as a snitch risk, making him persona non grata in his former circles. Their social media presence disappeared as embarrassment and legal complications made public visibility dangerous. The video of my burial was removed after legal pressure, but screenshots and recordings lived on in court documents. 6 months after their arrests, I received a letter from Rick in prison. It was filled with rage, threats, and delusions about his innocence. "This is all your fault," he wrote. "We were family and you destroyed us over a stupid prank. When I get out, there will be consequences." I showed the letter to Detective Morrison, who added witness intimidation to Rick's charges. He just doesn't learn, the detective said. Some people never take responsibility for their actions. Tiffany's letter was different, desperate and manipulative. She claimed she was sorry, that she never meant to hurt me, and that she was now homeless and living in a shelter. Please drop the charges, she begged. I'll do anything to make this right. I have nowhere to go. Jerome didn't write. According to his public defender, he was struggling with the reality of his situation and had been placed in protective custody after conflicts with other inmates. But the real vindication came from unexpected sources. My grandmother's estate lawyer contacted me about a sealed letter she had left, to be opened only if there were disputes about her will. In it, she detailed years of financial abuse from my family and explicitly stated her reasons for leaving everything to me. Emily is the only one who loves me for who I am, not what I have, the letter read. She visits because she cares, not because she wants something. The others see $signs when they look at me. I pray this house will give her the security and peace she deserves. Reading those words, I finally understood that my grandmother had known all along what kind of people they were. She had protected me in the only way she could. With my family's threats neutralized and their criminal behavior exposed, I could finally heal. I converted my grandmother's house into a sanctuary, part home, part memorial to her memory. I planted a garden in the backyard where she used to sit, and I started inviting the elderly neighbors over for weekly dinners. Mrs. Patterson became like a second grandmother to me. Your family never appreciated what they had in you, she said during one of our conversations. But their loss is our gain. This neighborhood is better with you here. I also used the restitution money to establish a foundation in my grandmother's name, helping elderly people protect themselves from financial abuse. The irony wasn't lost on me. My family's crimes were now funding programs to prevent others from suffering the same fate. My career flourished as well. The nursing supervisor who had been influenced by Tiffany's lies apologized and offered me a promotion. I should have known better, she admitted. Your work record speaks for itself. I won't make that mistake again. I started dating again, something I hadn't felt safe doing while my family was threatening me. David, a social worker I met through the foundation, understood trauma and healing in ways that made me feel truly seen. You didn't just survive, he told me after I shared my story. You transformed something horrible into something meaningful. That takes incredible strength. But the best part was the peace. I could sleep without nightmares. I could answer my door without fear. I could live without constantly looking over my shoulder. 2 years later, Rick was released on parole. Within a week, he showed up at my house, looking haggard and desperate. I watched from my security camera as he stood on my porch, clearly debating whether to knock or leave. I opened the door with confidence I never would have had before. Hello, Rick. Emily, he said quietly. I wanted to talk. About what? Threatening me again? Planning another burial? Or maybe you want to discuss the restraining order you're about to violate. He flinched at my words. I'm not here to cause trouble. Everything's gone. My marriage, my house, my kids won't even talk to me. I lost everything. You didn't lose anything, I replied calmly. You threw it all away when you decided to bury me alive for entertainment. It was just supposed to be a prank, he exploded, showing flashes of his old anger. We weren't going to actually hurt you. You left me to suffocate in a coffin while you filmed it for social media, I said. If a stranger hadn't heard my screams, I'd be dead. That's not a prank, Rick. That's attempted murder. The fight went out of him then, and I saw something I had never seen before, genuine remorse. I know, he whispered. I know what we did was wrong. I was jealous. You had everything together and we were all falling apart. It wasn't fair. So you tried to bury me alive. He had no answer for that. After a long silence, he asked, Is there any way we can fix this? Any way back? I looked at this broken man who had once terrified me and felt only pity. The way back was admitting what you did was wrong and taking responsibility. Instead, you spent 2 years blaming me for your consequences. Rick left that day and never returned. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he moved to another state, working construction and living in a trailer. Tiffany was released after serving 18 months and was last seen working at a fast food restaurant, still trying to rebuild her life. Jerome got additional time for prison violations and wouldn't be eligible for parole for at least 5 more years. I felt no satisfaction in their continued struggles, but I felt no guilt either. They had made their choices and consequences followed. I had simply refused to be their victim. The foundation expanded beyond anything I had imagined. We were now helping families across 3 states recognize and prevent elder abuse. I spoke at conferences sharing my grandmother's story and the warning signs that too many people ignore. Abuse often comes from within the family, I would tell audiences. The people we trust most are sometimes the ones capable of causing the greatest harm. But survival is possible, justice is achievable, and healing can happen. David proposed on the 2nd anniversary of my burial, a date that was once filled with trauma but had become a symbol of my strength. You faced the worst humanity has to offer and came out stronger, he said. I want to build a life with someone that courageous. Standing in my grandmother's garden, surrounded by friends who had become my chosen family, I realized that my biological family's greatest crime wasn't burying me alive. It was underestimating who I would become when I clawed my way back to the surface. They had tried to bury me, but they forgot that sometimes seeds need to be planted in darkness before they can grow toward the light. I was no longer the scared, accommodating girl they had targeted. I was a woman who knew her worth, protected her boundaries, and refused to let anyone dim her shine. Their prank had backfired in the most spectacular way possible. They had intended to break me, but instead they had forged me into someone unbreakable. So here's my question for you. Was Emily a hero for standing their ground, or did they go too far? I'm genuinely curious what you think. Let me know in the comments below. And hey, if you're hooked on stories about people finally finding their backbone, subscribe and ring that bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.